Daleks stop everywhere.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS once again, not with a fill-in this week, but with my favorite Next Stop Everywhere co-host, at least one of the two, because obviously Karen's not with us, but Jesse Jackson is back in time and space, ready to travel in the TARDIS and talk some classic Doctor Who. So hi, Jesse. Welcome back.
Hello, Charles. So miss me?
Oh, definitely.
I don't know.
I have missed you so much.
Fred
we haven't talked Titan Talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Fred was so good. I loved listening to you guys. I got a little bit
jealous? Get a little jealous?
No, well, maybe a little jealous, but mostly I got a little bit of preview because you had asked me to edit the episode, and so I got to listen to it before anyone else heard it, and it was awesome. I really think a great job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, Fred. Obviously, we've got to give credit to Fred Firestein for helping us out and doing such a great job. We've already had requests for Fred to come back on Next Stop Everywhere, so we'll have to try and do that down the road. But thank you, Jesse. I want to publicly thank you for helping edit the episode and helping salvage some of my audio on that. Really appreciate that because even though you didn't co-host, you're still helping us out, and it means a lot. So we just want to thank you for that.
Absolutely. We'll kind of let everyone know the plan. We'll kind of talk about this some more.
Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit as we get toward the end. We're going to kind of give everybody an update about all our behind-the-scenes shenanigans.
Absolutely.
And what's going on there, and updates about what we're planning for the future. So
sounds awesome.
All right, but in the meantime, so great to have you back. I've missed talking to you because we haven't been doing Titan Talk lately. We haven't been doing Next Stop Everywhere. So this is great. It's been about a month, and hope you've enjoyed your time off.
I have been, and boy, we are coming back with a great one to discuss.
Yes, we are, because we're going to talk about here at episode 131, the Doctor Who classic from 1975, Genesis of the Daleks.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. Here, I can even augment that a little bit here if I get my little thing going. There we go. But this is a big one. It's one of the classic era's top-rated all-time stories, right up there with the Caves of Androzani, and it's a fantastic episode. Can't wait to talk about this with you because it's a classic Tom Baker story, but also gives us the long-awaited, at least back in 1975, long-awaited origin of the Daleks and how they came to be. So if you're a comic book fan and you appreciate a good secret origins tale, this is right up your alley.
Yeah. Now, since then, they have played other the origin has been re-talked about other times. Like often DC Comics, changes Superman or Batman's origin.
They do a little retcon here and there.
Yeah. Overall, though, this has been, this is consistently what they do, right?
Right. Yeah. And this one, give a little background before we get started.
Please.
This story is considered by Russell T Davies to essentially be the start of the Time War. This is essentially what he considers the opening shot in the Time War, where the Time Lords actively try to interfere in the Daleks' timeline. So, as far as he's concerned, this is where the Time Lords struck first, which I think is really interesting. So, this is if you're a modern era fan, you're not really into the classic era, you still might want to go back and watch this story because of its importance, and again, it does have a connection to the Time War, according to Russell T Davies.
I've not thought about that, but now that he says that,
Right.
I totally agree. I mean,
Yeah.
that is, it is definitely kind of the first
Opening salvo.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, and and it works. Obviously that wasn't the intention back in 1975 when this story was created, but it fits really well, and especially given, I have to think that Russell T Davies was inspired by this story to help develop the Time War storyline because of the Time Lords' interference in this, or just maybe he remembered it while he was creating the Time War, and it just fit in so perfectly. So I think that's a pretty cool concept.
I think so too.
And it's great, especially since we're talking comic books again. When modern writers, they incorporate the past and kind of approach it from a fresh perspective and put a fresh spin on it. And I think that's kind of what Russell T Davies did.
Absolutely. We have said many times, take a drink, Robinson's Starman,
Yep.
I think, is the perfect example of how well that can be done.
Yes.
It is just he embraced all the different characters that were named Starman in the DC universe, and
he connected them all.
Yeah, and in not a wow, boy, that was a awkward dismount. No, I mean, he really did somehow, certainly not seamlessly, but was able to make this really work well and
Right.
kind of get that. So absolutely.
All right. So talking Genesis of the Daleks, give a quick overview here.
Yes.
Written by Dalek creator Terry Nation, this story. So this obviously is as official as it gets, at least as far as Terry Nation's concerned. Directed by David Maloney, and this was the fourth serial of season 12 from 1975, and that's going to play a bit of a part in my themes for this time.
Okay.
So pay attention to that. Obviously starring Tom Baker as the Fourth Doctor, Elisabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith, and Ian Marter as Harry Sullivan. So you can't go wrong with a classic Tom Baker and Elisabeth Sladen story, as far as I'm concerned.
Have we looked? I do not remember us having a Harry episode again before.
We did Robot.
Okay.
Tom Baker's first story where Harry's introduced.
Okay.
So we've done that. We've talked about Harry before, and initially you weren't, if I remember correctly, you weren't initially impressed by him.
I could see that, though. I liked him this time as we talk more.
Obviously this is Tom Baker's fourth story as the Fourth Doctor. So by this time Harry had been a little more developed, I think.
Yes.
And he takes a very active role in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Probably more than Sarah Jane does in this story.
Yeah.
And but it's really good. Also, to do our guest cast, we have the introduction of Michael Wisher, who did some Dalek voices previously on Doctor Who. He gets introduced as Davros, and this is the very first story with Davros. So if you're a big Davros fan, and hey, who isn't? That crazy wheelchair megalomaniac this is his big debut. And Michael Wisher also appeared in previous Doctor Who stories. He was a character named John Wakefield in The Ambassadors of Death, which was a John Pertwee story, favorite of mine, and Rex Farrell in another John Pertwee story, Terror of the Autons, and he played a character named Kalik in Carnival of Monsters. And then he also did Dalek voices in Frontier in Space, Planet of the Daleks, and Death of the Daleks. And then he also did characters, Magritte in Revenge of the Cybermen, another Tom Baker story, which is the one right after this. And he played a character named Morelli in Planet of Evil, another Tom Baker story. So Michael Wisher is a huge important part of Doctor Who's past.
Okay, good.
appearing in several episodes, and obviously playing the debut, initially setting the gold standard for Davros.
Yeah.
And some other notable actors in this one, Stephen Yardley, who played Severin. I believe he was the Muto that helped Sarah Jane. He played a character named Arak in the Colin Baker story Vengeance on Varos. And he was in an episode of Remington Steele featuring future James Bond. So there's this very slight James Bond connection here. Pierce Brosnan. So I want to give a little shout out to him. Dennis Chinnery. He played Ronson, who was one of the scientists that initially he's the first person chronologically that was ever exterminated by a Dalek.
Oh.
Because he's the first person killed by a Dalek in this story. So if this is their first story, then he's the first person ever killed by a Dalek. He was notable because he appeared in Superman the movie as one of the Krypton Council elders.
Ooh, okay.
So there's a cool Superman connection there. Guy Steiner, who played Ravon, character named Ravon in this one, he was in the David Lynch movie Lost Highway. He's been on episodes of Babylon 5, Star Trek Enterprise, and the movie Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Ooh, very cool.
So he's got a little bit of a diverse, interesting background. And then lastly, one of the more notable actors from this story, Tom Georgeson, who played Cavil, one of the scientists. He was the detective inspector in Tom Baker's final story, Legopolis, the one that kind of notices the TARDIS and that thinks it's a real police box, only to find, of course, little dead bodies of Tegan's aunt inside.
Okay.
He was in the story, but he's mostly notable because he played a character named George Thomason in the movie A Fish Called Wanda. So if you're a fan of that movie with Jamie Lee Curtis, Kevin Kline, and Michael Palin, which I really love that movie. He's George, the kind of British crime guy that Jamie Lee Curtis's character kind of manipulates.
Okay.
While he's in the Slammer, that guy.
Good.
If you're familiar with that, so some pretty notable cast in this one for a classic episode.
Yeah, it is.
So I just thought I'd run that down. So with that in mind, let's start with our main topics this week.
Okay.
And topic number 1, let's do the time warp again.
Very nice.
Thank you. That was obviously from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And this is the Fourth Doctor I want to talk about, obviously, because the Fourth Doctor, he's recruited by the Time Lords, or at least a Time Lord, and essentially given the instructions to go back in time and either prevent the Daleks from ever becoming, or just to make kind of affect their development, some way to kind of affect their timeline so they're not as much of a threat in their future. And he does this. He's initially resistant, and I want to talk about that. And then obviously he has that big scene toward the end where he holds those two wires up together and debates about whether he has the right to end the Daleks once and for all. So I want to get your thoughts on Tom Baker's Fourth Doctor in this story, because it's a pretty big one, and he has a very big moral dilemma in this story.
So Charles, I every time I I watch a Tom Baker, Sarah Jane episode, I am just struck again by how well they interact together and how likable Tom Baker is. Um, he is not as this episode, from my perspective, does not have as many funny throwaway lines.
Right. It is more serious this
It
one.
is a serious, but it. I think the acting is really good.
Yeah.
Now I've seen the Wire episode clips before, so it a little
But
bit
no,
of the gravitas of it was taken away because I'd seen this before.
yeah.
So, but thinking in context, I
Yeah.
think that would have been really interesting.
But now that you've seen it in its full context with everything leading up to that moment.
Yeah.
How-
I liked it. It wasn't as powerful as I thought it was going to be,
right.
but it wasn't bad. I think more interesting is the whole chess game between him and Davos about, well, they've been defeated. How have they been defeated? Well, a lot of reasons. You will tell
Right.
me. You will tell me.
Yeah, that interrogation scene. So why don't we talk about that? So what did you think of the essentially Davros to kind of set this up? Davros gets a hold of both the Doctor, or Harry and Sarah Jane, and then also the Doctor, and he straps them to a chair. The Doctor is essentially like in a lie detector chair, and if he lies, Davros will punish Harry and Sarah Jane.
Right.
And with like painful electric shocks or whatever, and torture them. So essentially, the Doctor's forced to give up the goods on how the Daleks were defeated in the future, so that Davros can plan for it and presumably overcome all those defeats.
Yeah.
So, what did you think of that?
I liked it. I liked the idea. There's a lot of timey-wimey in this, right?
Right.
That
Yes.
the
Hence, let's do the
doctor
Time Warp
the
again.
doctor
Yes.
calls them Daleks.
Yeah.
So, and someone says, "I've never heard that phrase before till just recently. How did you know it beforehand?" So you're like, did the doctor in it? Are the reason they're called Daleks is because the doctor said Daleks?
Well, the Davros did say, like only a few people know this.
Right.
So essentially, like, it wasn't very widely known.
Yeah.
So then when the Doctor references it, it's like, well, hey, how could you know this?
Yes.
So that kind of tips him off.
Right. And then the whole Davos believes he's from the future.
Right.
And so trying to change the past by gaining information is an interesting point. And of course, the Doctor, who has these loosey-goosey, time can be written, not one single line can be written,
Right.
back and forth, is not doing that. So I like that. I liked Davos bothers me a little bit because the whole I don't know why they made him so blind and only can move partially.
Well, they've explained on various Dalek stories that there was all this radiation going on.
Yeah.
And presumably Davros was affected by this.
Yeah, and
that's why he built his wheelchair, and he only has the use of his one arm.
Right.
And he kind of like created this artificial kind of third eye that he can actually see through because he's blind in his regular eyes.
Yeah, and and though the people around him do not show the effect of the radiation as much yet.
Right.
So,
it is kind of weird about that.
And
yes.
so, and I assume what they're saying is that as life continues, they are going to slowly become what we know as the Daleks will really be
Right.
They will grow into the radiation will make them so that the Daleks will become their carriers.
Right.
And they
Right.
talk about that in the episode.
Right.
I just liked it.
Maybe because of the radiation, there's already been some mutant births,
Yeah.
and they kind of get an idea of where their species is going.
I think so. I I didn't. I thought um, the original Time Lord who comes and visits him,
Yeah.
kind of looks like Death. I think that was done specifically for an Ingrid Bergman film or something, an
Yeah.
homage to that. He just kind of looked a little dumb with the black ears.
It's not really the black ears. It's just more of a hood, like a raised collar that comes out.
It's ears, Charles.
It's not his ears.
It's his
It's
ears.
not. It's not his ears.
I'm gonna Google. I'm gonna
it-
Google Time
picture.
Lord dark ears and see
Well,
what comes up.
why don't you while you're at if you notice we watched the Five Doctors.
Yes.
Remember that cape that the Master was wearing in the Death Zone? That kind of with the collar that came out and pointed ends.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same look. That's the exact same look as this guy.
Okay.
It's just a cape, part of the cape. Because remember the Time Lords, they have those raised high collars. So it's just the way that this cape was designed. That it had this raised high pointed collar that comes out.
Okay. So I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
And it appears, yes, I see if I really look closely,
Right.
that it's not attached to the black hood.
Yes.
But it looks like it's bunny ears. It's a bad look, Mr. Time Lord.
Maybe not from the profile, from the side. It's more noticeable that way. But
so I will tweet out a picture.
The Time Lords have never been known for their fashion. Let's just put it that way.
We will say. Anyway, this continues the premise, or continues the story that Time Lords are jerks.
Yeah.
And they are not very likable.
Right.
And this guy was not very likable at all.
Yeah. Now, one of the things in this scene I thought was interesting. The Doctor initially doesn't want to have anything to do with the Time Lord. Mm-hmm. He's just like, hey, we brought you here, and we've got a mission for you. And he's just like, whatever, dude. I don't have it. I don't care. Yeah. And then the Time Lord says the word Daleks. Mm-hmm. And then the Doctor's just like, oh, tell me more. Yeah. And so that right there, the Time Lord kind of knows how to push the Doctor's buttons at this point, because obviously the Daleks are one of the Doctor's biggest enemies. And I think he manipulates the Doctor in this a little bit to carry out his plan. Now, what I kind of wonder is why the Doctor is so willing to affect the Daleks' timeline.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand.
Like he seems, maybe it's just because his hatred for the Daleks overrides his common sense.
Yeah, and they have that when they're doing the Wire episode. They have the Hitler debate without saying Hitler. Right. And
we'll talk about when we talk about Davros and the Daleks later in our third segment.
Yes.
But they're obviously very heavy Nazi overtones to the story.
Yes, very much, as they do their salutes and such.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just the Doctor, you would think, would be like, no, we can't change the timeline, and you should know that because hey, you're a Time Lord, so why are you so eager to do that? Mm-hmm. And you think he'd be more questioning of this Time Lord, but the Doctor, I think, is just so, he's just, the Daleks bother him so much that he's like, okay, I'm cool with this plan, let's go for it.
Yeah, all of a sudden, okay.
And then like, I guess this means I have to go to Skaro, and then the Time Lord is just like, well, you're already here. We just thought it would save time. This is Skaro.
What is the episode? As I go to Charlespedia, Capaldi had the episode right where we went back to
Yes.
the young Scarrow,
Well,
right? And that
that might factor into my reverse the polarity segment.
because I thought of that immediately
Yeah.
at the beginning when they were fighting in the scenes. I
Right,
went,
with all
oh,
the misty background and the guys in gas masks.
yes.
Yes, that may have something to do with what I have.
Spoilers, Jesse, right? Okay.
Jumping ahead as always. You're always
Yes.
one step ahead of me.
Yeah.
Have you been traveling in time, Jesse?
Yes,
I kind of have to
absolutely.
wonder.
It did make me want to go watch that episode.
It does, doesn't it?
It does. It really does a lot.
Which is not a bad thing because that's a great story.
No, it is. Yes. So anyway, as we ramble, I love Tom Baker. I
Right.
love watching. This is a very serious episode with a little bit of humor.
Right.
It is long. It is 6 parts.
Right.
But I do not feel like there's a lot of
Filler. Yeah.
And I
the
also
pacing's good in this
yeah,
one.
and I do think that it would be interesting to edit this without the credit breaks.
Right.
Just the solid.
The
2 hour.
if you happen to get the recent Tom Baker the complete first season Blu-ray set, or as it was released in the UK properly as Doctor Who's season 12.
Right.
I don't know why they can't do that over here, but that Blu-ray set has an omnibus edition.
Oh, okay.
So you don't have to worry about you can watch it all as a movie, a 2-hour, 15-minute movie if you want.
Okay.
Now, personally, I kind of prefer the episodes because you get the more impact of the cliffhangers. I know you're not as big on those, but for watching Classic Who, the story, I think it works if you kind of watch it in 2 chunks of 3 episodes each.
Mm-hmm.
You watch 3 episodes, take a little break, do something else, maybe come back the next day or whatever, and then watch the next 3.
Okay. I'll have to try that.
And it definitely breaks up those longer episode stories. Anything that's like 6 or 7 episodes long from the classic era, it works a lot better when you kind of break it up into chunks, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel as much of a slog to get through when you're just kind of breaking it up like that. So that's just my little tip.
Okay, thanks. What are your thoughts about Tom in this? The Doctor in this?
I think he's fantastic because of the heavy-handedness of the story, the drama, and the importance of it. Tom Baker, he does get some occasionally funny lines, like he comes up to a couple guards and he's just like, "Hey, I'm a spy," and knocks them out. But for the most part, he's very serious in this story, and it kind of gives Tom's Doctor, which has been very eccentric and prone to those great quippy lines, it gives him more drama to do. It's a much more dramatic performance in this episode. And as Tom Baker steps up to the challenge, and then obviously when he's facing off against Davros, that they have this immediate battle of wills.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that kind of cements Davros as one of the great Doctor Who villains of all time, because he's intelligent enough to be a serious threat to the Doctor. He's not an idiot. He's just blinded by his megalomaniacal nature. And so when those two face off, and it's great, and Tom Baker plays off so well against Michael Wisher in this, I think. And obviously, and then we get to the moment where he's having that debate with Sarah Jane, going and doing, do I have that right? And Sarah Jane's trying to convince him, like, hey, if this was a virus, you wouldn't have any problems with it. You see this this conflicted look on Tom Baker's face when he's doing this, and he does a really good job, I think, of portraying that moral dilemma.
Yeah, I think he does a great job of showing, and and there are unintended consequences all the time,
Right.
and maybe because I just caught up on the latest season of The Good Place,
Yeah.
um, and I don't know if you watched that show.
I don't watch that show,
Okay,
but
um,
I know you're a fan of it and you've
yeah.
talked about it. So
So
yeah.
there, very quickly, there is um,
And that's
the
a spinoff from The Good Wife.
no, this is The Good Place.
Oh, this is the one with
Yeah,
Kristen Bell,
yeah,
right?
and so the
Yeah, okay, I'm
idea
sorry. Yeah,
they've
yeah.
gone to after there's a good place and a bad place, and
That's right.
the only way you get to the good place is if you earn enough good points.
Got it.
And in the latest episode, spoilers, they talk about that things are so complicated now that if you go buy a tomato from the grocery store, it may end up giving you -8 points because the farmer was raised used pesticides. The people who picked it were workers that were treated horrible by the company. The grocery chain cheats on their taxes, and all this unintended consequences. So
Well, that seems rather unfair because it's not like you did it. It's
exactly,
they did it.
and there is the premise of Ted Danson arguing,
Yeah.
but and so I thought of that. But if you wiped out a illness, there could be unintended consequences that
Right.
could hurt something else, like if someone had smashed the two mosquitoes on Noah's Ark, we would
Right.
never have mosquitoes. But what would what's the, once again, the stepping on a butterfly.
Oh, the
in
butterfly
past.
effect. Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
I thought of that too.
Yeah.
And
And that's kind of what Tom Baker's Fourth Doctor brings up.
yes, he does.
He's like, look at all the alien races that come together to fight the Daleks.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
obviously, if they weren't there, these races wouldn't be interacting with each other.
and I thought that was a great point. And once again, not that you and I ever doubt,
Yes.
but much like when Star Trek
Right.
shoots for the stars and really tries to tell a great story, much like, believe it or not, the Orville
Yeah.
at times will shoot for
Right.
a deeper story than we're telling. Sometimes Doctor Who is just a fun adventure story, and other times there really is a very deep philosophy that you're discussing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love this story, and why, if you want to argue, Tom Baker being the greatest Doctor of all times has
Right.
to be in the argument.
Well, definitely.
Yeah.
And then, and obviously this is why this kind of, these great moral issues make good drama.
Yes.
And it's why that I think this story is so highly regarded by so many fans.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Let's go into our second topic, unless you had anything else about Tom
Nope.
Baker you want to
Nope.
talk about. All right.
Just
all
once
right.
again, love the hat, love the scarf.
Yeah. It's iconic.
It is iconic. It just looks so good.
Yep, it does. And so the second topic I want to talk about is Fight the Power. And this is the 1975 version by the Isley Brothers, not
Yes.
the Public Enemy version.
I take it, are you doing all songs from 75?
Exactly, because
Okay.
this story was from 1975.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
that's our connection.
Good.
And so the Isley Brothers version I'm talking about, Fight the Power.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Sarah Jane and Harry, who Sarah Jane ends up allied with, we talked about Severin from the Mutos, this guy who's surprisingly very helpful, except the fact that he has these kind of this limp that he kind of has to drag his leg along. But he does everything to try to help Sarah Jane against everything that's going on. And Harry steps up to take a very active role in resisting against the Khaleds, who are very Nazi-like, as we're going to talk about more.
Mm-hmm.
But so I want to get your thoughts on Sarah Jane and Harry in this one, and what you thought of them.
First off, I love Sarah Jane.
We talked about that
yeah.
many times. Yes.
Yeah, it is, and you just can't I can't say enough how much and how sad I am when I think about that. Elisabeth Sladen is gone.
Right.
Way too young. Um, it she is so and you're right, she does not get a lot of time to work this time. I mean, she got some screen time,
Right.
but
I mean,
not as yeah.
she has this great chase sequence where they're trying to climb up this rocket, her and
Really
Severin,
well done.
and they've got what is it? Fall guards going after them, trying to chase them down, and they're firing rifles at them. And they're just Sarah Jane's going like, I can't climb anymore, and Severin's trying to encourage her to keep climbing. And then there's that great cliffhanger at the end of episode 2 where she falls.
Yes.
And you're thinking, oh no, and this is why the cliffhangers, I love cliffhangers, because they're like, well, did she fall to her death? And of course, in a very Flash Gordon serial way, you come back in the next episode, nope, she just landed on a platform.
Yeah.
A little farther down, but she's okay. But
Yeah.
but you were worried, like, oh no, she fell to her death. And I thought that was a great, and I love the direction of this episode. I think it's really well shot. The lighting is perfect in a lot of these scenes. Very dramatic.
It is. All of this is really well done.
All the Khalids and their black uniforms. It looks like a very good production, especially for Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And so what did you think about Sarah Jane's big chase sequence?
The chase scene was good. I liked her saying that we're going to be too weak to escape if we don't try to escape now.
Right.
So I thought that was very cool. I liked her. A lot of things going on with her. She really understood what's going on. She's very active. She just is so likable, and she. I was really impressed with her discussion with the doctor and talk about, why wouldn't you? Why? And she's very.
She makes a very impassioned speech.
Yeah, and very just yes.
Why wouldn't you? Because if this was a virus, again, you wouldn't think twice about it. And so she's kind of like taking the hey, let's get rid of them argument.
Yeah, and the other point I think is really, really well discussed is that he's worried about the moral consequences and overthinking.
Right.
And she's going
she's the more practical, common sense.
They're
approach.
Evil.
Yes.
Just get rid of them.
Right. Why are you having this debate? It's just like they're just going to kill people. What are you thinking? His viewpoint is so broad because of time and space.
Right.
And hers is just very straightforward and direct. Like, okay, this is a threat. You have a chance to take it out. Why don't you? Mm-hmm. And that's what makes that's what makes that debate there in that scene, I think, really, really work. And make it so compelling.
Yeah.
And Elisabeth Sladen steps up to the plate, does a really good job with that.
She's just amazing.
Yeah. What did you think about Harry in this episode?
So I had not remembered him.
Yeah, because we talked about Robot before, but here he's more of a presence, I think, than in that story.
Yeah, and I think he was well done. I read somewhere, I had to stop and went, okay, who's this guy? And I read, I went to Wikipedia, read about him.
Ian Marter,
Yeah, and there was, I guess, some people liked him, some people didn't. The thought was they may have another older doctor, so they may need someone to do a little more of the action. But since Tom Baker was younger, it didn't have to that. So I liked him. I liked him in this one. I
Yeah.
thought he was a fair companion.
Right.
It's kind of interesting. Uh, they all three had good chemistry.
Yeah. Right.
Very interesting to read in Wikipedia, which is never wrong. There were
Right.
certain theories there may have been a romance between them two.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. I don't see that one.
um,
I don't see Sarah Jane falling because she was crushing on the Doctor pretty hard.
okay.
I
You
think.
don't think just kind of as a
Now, I mean, Harry might have been interested in her, but I don't
mhm,
think that was reciprocated. I
okay.
think because Sarah Jane being a reporter and Harry was kind of like this really stuffy,
Mhm,
like very English gentleman.
mhm,
You notice like one of the scenes, like in several of the scenes in this, you notice like he's going through all this stuff. He's going across the wastelands
mhm.
and whatnot, and then when he gets inside, say the Khaled headquarters, his shirts are completely starched perfectly.
Yes.
And like they're just just so prim and proper, and it's like he didn't even like dirty himself through all this.
Mhm.
And I just think it's kind of funny that it kind of exemplifies to me what Harry, because Harry was just he was essentially created as kind of like the James Bond type of companion,
Right.
like that to be a little bit more of an action oriented, but also very like suave, or at least
Mhm.
attempted to be suave, and very British. And sometimes it doesn't always carry off, but there was that intent there. So it's essentially kind of like to see the Doctor with James Bond as a companion, what that would be like.
Yeah, and I liked him. I thought he was action enough in there.
Right.
There was a good interaction between the three of them. They did well. I think this would be good.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. Now there was that one scene that with Harry I want to talk about really quickly, which kind of is very amusing to a lot of fans. The scene where he's walking with the Doctor through across the wastelands or whatever, and they get to this cave. It's really dark, and he gets his foot caught in a giant clam. So what did you think of
Yes,
that scene? Which is pretty funny.
it was funny.
And then he, like afterwards, after the Doctor gets him out of it, it's just like, why is it always me putting my foot in it?
Yes, and kind of I like the idea that he was sitting there, um, doing kind of making fun of himself.
Right.
So that was really cool.
He is very
Hmm.
self-deprecating, and that's what
Yeah.
makes him more likable, I think, is that he is self-deprecating. He doesn't take it, even though he dresses and looks so serious. He can be self-deprecating and not so stuffy,
Yeah,
even though he looks
absolutely.
that way. All right, let's move on to our third topic.
Okay.
Um, you're no good, you're no good, you're no good, baby, you're no good.
Well done on the topics this time.
Thank you. And this is that was of course the Linda Ronstadt
Yes.
classic from 1975. From 1975, coming in here on the countdown. I'm Casey Kasem.
And
Uh,
a young Jesse Jackson had a massive crush on Linda Ronstadt in
yeah,
1975.
well, I was all of 6 years old then, so it wasn't
Hmm.
exactly my scene. I was listening to like Monkeys rerun, watching Monkeys reruns on TV.
Hmm.
That was
Yes.
my jam back at 6 years old. But
Hmm.
this is I want to talk about Davros and the Daleks, obviously. So
I was
Davros.
16, by the way.
Oh, you were 16. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you had
So
to,
right
so
in my.
that makes more sense, I
Yes, it
would think.
does.
Yes, it does. But
Um.
so that would be explained why you were having a crush on Linda Ronstadt.
Absolutely.
So Davros in this scene, he's so evil, and right off the bat, and
He
it's just
is
so
so
out.
evil.
It's just it's like like if you're just coming from the like your modern era approach, where you had seen Davros in the modern era, where we'd seen him in stories like The Stolen Earth and The Magician's Assistant and whatnot, and then you go back, this Davros is exactly the same. The dude never changes.
He looks the same. He
Right.
is evil.
They even have like pretty for 1975 pretty decent makeup for him. And
Yeah, and I love the um when he says exterminate,
Right.
and he
He's got that
sounds like a
voice.
Dalek. Yes.
Yeah, it's because, and again, this is Michael Wisher's performance is so it was so iconic, is that everybody that, like Julian Bleach, who played Davros in the modern era, still
Hmm.
goes back to that performance for his performance, because it just really set the standard.
Yeah.
I mean, you had Terry Malloy kind of doing it too in the '80s, after Michael Wisher, and during the Davison and Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy eras. But Michael Wisher is just it really it's a definitive portrayal, I think. And it's just he's kind of like, and we talked about the Daleks are they, and the Khalids, especially in the story, have this very Nazi um, comparison. Like
Yes.
they're a metaphor for the Nazis, and so Davros is essentially like the Joseph Mengele, comparison.
Yes.
The scientist who is up to all kinds of horrible, horrible experience at the expense of people.
And doesn't care.
Doesn't care. Very,
Um.
very sociopathic.
Yes. Um.
So, what did you
I,
think about him? What about
yeah, I
what?
thought he was a. It was a little distracting. The his only one hand moving,
Right.
and his um
But that's what makes him so creepy. Is that,
yeah,
oh,
it is
he's only
creepy.
this one hand, and it's all like gnarled and
And I
hideous.
I would have liked, this is a minor thing, but I would have liked his face not to be so stiff.
Yeah.
Like only his jaw moves.
Yeah.
He doesn't move his head or anything. So
Right.
that's a minor thing, because it makes him look more
Yeah.
fake.
Right.
That so
But he does kind of twirl around in the wheelchair, like it spins around,
yes, he does.
dramatically.
Yeah.
He cruises around in that thing pretty good.
Yeah. Interesting too that the bottom of the his wheelchair looks like the bottom of a Dalek.
Right. Yeah,
And
that says a lot, doesn't it?
yes, it
Yep.
does. Yeah. So I was struck how evil he was, and how manipulative he was, and how foolish the people around him are. Now,
Right.
like, okay, I will do what you want, but only thing I ask is, can I talk to everyone first?
Right.
Like, no, they're just
Yeah.
so,
Naive.
yes,
Yes.
or so
Well,
British.
yeah.
The whole, oh, absolutely, old man, we have to do what's right.
Right.
Well,
and there's a lot to be said how you can compare that story to what's going on today's news.
yes,
Because just that these horrible things happen, and people just kind of nod and go along with it. And it's that kind of like, well, I'm afraid to confront Davros about this.
yeah,
And this kind of like, I'm not sure I should interfere because I'm afraid of what he might do.
hmm
And it's how like Hitler rose to power, because he took advantage of weak people and rose to power.
yes,
And it's this theme that goes on through actual real life history, where you have people with such horrible ambitions that are just they're so driven and controlling and whatnot, and they're surrounded by a lot of weak-minded people that just kind of either fall in line, or they're easily taken out because they're not that bright.
hmm
They're any threat is taken off the board. And this is a perfect example. This just hearing this 2 hour, 15-minute story shows how that's possible. And so it's I think it's it's a credit that Terry Nation, because of drawing back on that Nazi source material, and that inspiration for the Daleks, showcases how that could actually happen in real life.
Yeah, and I also think another great point, Charles, is the betrayal at the end of the Daleks with him.
Right. They turn on him.
They do turn on him, and which um, ultimately he's still involved with them, so
Yeah.
something works out. But at the time, you truly have created a Frankenstein monster,
Right.
where you've created something that's
Got its
greater,
own got its
yeah,
own ambitions.
yeah, its own ambitions and evil, and you've let that evil genie out of the bottle,
Right.
and now then there's nothing you could do. So that was a great twist ending,
Yeah.
and
Did that?
leaving it there.
What did you think? You were pretty impressed with the way. Did you think the Daleks would turn on Davros?
I did not. I knew that. You obviously knew that the Doctor wasn't going to get rid of them,
Right.
but you also wondered how they'd escape, and the the Daleks killing everyone, that's in that inner circle, and the
Right.
bloodthirstiness of them. Um, you know, if you are not a Doctor Who fan, a Dalek is iconic, and you think it looks stupid.
Right.
It's an
Right.
egg beater and a plunger.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's attached to a salt shaker. Yes.
yeah, but the reality is, as you watch this and you see, they really have created this wonderful villain. And one of the reasons you love a villain is
Right.
because they're the hero in their own story, right? You
Yeah.
you feel for them.
Right.
Not the Daleks. The Daleks have no redeeming value.
Right.
They are just
Evil.
they
Yes.
are
Yeah.
evil.
Right.
They are
Without morality, and
yeah,
that's one of the things that even like the scientists recognize, or
yeah.
that hey, they have no compassion. No, we don't want to be like this. This is why we want you to stop your experiments, Davros.
Mhm.
And he's just like, Davros is just all, yeah, that's nice,
Yeah.
and I'm going to kill you now, and do what I want.
Mhm.
And then but then, yeah, like you said, this great betrayal where the Daleks are going, or the Davros says, you will obey me, when they start showing a little bit of resistance. And then this great line that the Dalek retorts, we obey no one. We are the
Yeah.
superior beings. So essentially, like, F you, Davros, we're in charge. You just happen to create us, but, we've got, we know what we want to do. We don't need you anymore. And they seemingly exterminate him. But as it turns out, of course, you can't keep a good villain down. And he's not dead after all. He turns
No.
up again in Destiny of the Daleks. So, but later down the road. But
Yeah.
still pretty interesting. So, anything else about the story before we move on?
Nope. No. I do. I am a sucker for the
Yeah.
map with the little bitty things that move around. That
Right.
have the
Right.
X's.
Yes.
I'm a sucker for that. No matter what old World War movie
The
you're
the
doing that.
battlefield map.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I
Yes.
love that. So
Yeah.
no, just great stuff.
So did this story give you a little bit of a better appreciation for the Daleks now that you know their origin?
Um. No, I will tell you. Um. I get burned out on the Daleks.
Okay.
But I think the 13th Doctor's take on them in the New Year's special was
Resolution.
kind of
Yeah.
nice, yeah. And so I knew going into this, obviously the name of the title. Yes, I see you're new.
Yes.
Yeah. I've always respected the Daleks. My only issue is that at times I just feel like, okay, we've gone to them too often. Yeah, so that's the
Yeah.
only thing.
Oh, the overkill. Yes, I get
Yeah.
it. All right. All right. Let's move on then.
Mhm.
So what's your? Oh, let's do best lines first. So what's your favorite lines of this story?
So I did not have too many. I liked, and I did not write it down, but the discussion of, can I get some tea or coffee? And then, like,
That was good.
no
And
tea, Harry.
yeah. He's telling, yeah. The doctor's just like they're talking, and he's ignoring them, going like, "Where? What about the tea? Where's the tea?"
Yeah. Just like, we need something.
That was good.
How about you? What, I know you always have some good lines.
Yeah, I've got a few. I've got a few exchanges here. Um, so the first one was this exchange between the Doctor and the Time Lord at the beginning,
Hmm.
where the Doctor says, "Look, whatever I've done for you in the past, I've more than made up for. I will not tolerate this continual interference in my life." The Time Lord replies, "Continual? We pride ourselves. We seldom interfere in the affairs of others." And the Doctor's like, "Except mine." And
Yes.
the Time Lord goes, "You, Doctor, are a special case. You enjoy the freedom we allow you. In return, occasionally, not continually, we ask you to do something for us." The Doctor replies, "I won't do it. Whatever it is, I refuse." The Time Lord says, "Daleks." The Doctor pauses for a moment. "Daleks? Tell me more." So I thought that was good.
Yeah.
Um, and then later, an exchange between the Doctor and Davros. This is where he's talking to Davros about like if you had created a virus in your laboratory, in the laboratory. So the Doctor goes, "Davros, if you had created a virus in your laboratory, something contagious and infectious that killed on contact, a virus that would destroy other forms of life, would you allow its use?" Davros thinks about it and goes, "It is an interesting conjecture." And the Doctor replies, "Would you do it?" Davros goes, "The only living thing, the microscopic organism, reigning supreme, a fascinating idea." The Doctor goes, "But would you do it?" Davros replies, "Yes, yes, to hold in my hand a capsule that contained such power, to know that life and death on such a scale was my choice, to know that the tiny pressure of my thumb, enough to break the glass, would end everything. Yes, I would do it. That power would set me up above the gods, and through the Daleks I shall have that power."
Which is a wonderful
Right.
point that later the Doctor has that choice and
Yes,
chooses not to do it.
exactly.
So
And
yeah,
so it does kind of set up that later on in the episode.
mhm.
And speaking of that scene, I also have that exchange.
Good, please.
So we'll go through that. So this is obviously the Doctor and Sarah Jane, where the Doctor is holding up his two wires together. Yeah, that iconic scene. Sarah Jane goes, "Well, what are you waiting for?" The Doctor replies, "Just touch these two strands together, and the Daleks are finished." "Have I that right?" Sarah Jane replies, "To destroy the Daleks? You can't doubt it." The Doctor replies, "Well, I do. You see, some things could be better with the Daleks. Many future worlds will become allies because of the fear of the Daleks." Sarah Jane replies, "It isn't like that." The Doctor replies, "Well, the final responsibility is mine, and mine alone. You see, if someone who knew the future pointed out a child to you and told you that that child would grow up to be totally evil, to be a ruthless dictator who would destroy millions of lives, could you then kill that child?" Sarah Jane pauses for a moment. "We're talking about the Daleks, the most evil creatures ever invented. You must destroy them. You must complete your mission for the Time Lords." The Doctor replies, "Do I have that right? Simply touch one wire against the other, and that's it? The Daleks cease to exist? Hundreds of millions of people, thousands of generations can live without fear, in peace, and never even know the word Dalek?" Sarah Jane replies, "Then why wait? If it was a disease or some sort of bacteria you were destroying, you wouldn't even hesitate." The Doctor replies, "But if I kill, wipe out a whole intelligent life form, then I'd become like them. I'd be no better than the Daleks." And Sarah Jane replies, "Think of all the suffering there will be if you don't do it." So pretty heavy stuff.
Yes, it is.
Great debate too.
Great debate. Yes.
All right. So anything else?
Nope.
No other
Nope.
quotes? Okay. What's your rating?
I'm gonna give this 9 out of 10 time rings.
Very good. You really like this story.
I did. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I'm a little bit above you. I give it 10 out of 10 giant clams because this is I know giant clams is pretty funny,
It is
uh,
very funny.
but this is such an iconic Doctor Who story, and especially for the classic era. It's one of the best. Um, it's one of those that you hope people will watch to help get them hooked on Doctor Who. And obviously this is the classic era scale that it's a 10 out of 10, but I think it needs to be recognized because it is such an important story.
Yeah, I
And one of my favorites too.
yeah, I agree. It's just
And it's
it's
obviously
really
one
well
I've
done.
been wanting to talk about with you for so long.
Yeah,
So
I'm really glad we did.
yeah.
But hey, Charles,
Hey, Jesse.
in the grand scope of Doctor Who,
Yeah.
isn't there some links to this story that you may want to recommend?
Well, gee, thanks for setting me up so smoothly.
Yes.
Yes. So in our reverse the polarity segment this week, obviously we're going to talk about The Magician's Apprentice, the first episode from Series 9 in 2015, written by Stephen Moffat, who obviously was a fan of Genesis of the Daleks. So really quickly, I'm just going to hit the highlights. The 12th Doctor, who's traveling across a foggy, war-ravaged battleground. Hey, that looks familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Encounters a young boy trapped in a field of hand mines. Get it? It's a pun.
Yes.
After throwing the boy a sonic screwdriver so they communicate with him, the Doctor encourages the boy to find and tries to find a way to save him until he learns that boy is Davros, the future creator of the Daleks. Dun dun dun. And as a result, the Doctor abandons him. Wah, wah.
Mm-hmm.
But so we have we kind of go back in the story where we have Clara gets summoned by units, Kate Stewart, to help contact the Doctor after these airplanes get frozen in mid-flight. And we have, once they're there, they get contacted by Missy, who wants units' attention to arrange a meeting with Clara. And apparently she's looking for the Doctor as well because she received his confession dial. So there's a bunch of kind of like a backstory on this. But the stuff with Davros on Skaro is what obviously is the main connection here. And, eventually Clara and Missy end up on the planet Skaro, the Dalek homeworld, so that's obviously has a connection to the story. They get captured by the Daleks and forced to the Doctor's TARDIS to be executed in front of the Doctor. And the Doctor pleads with Davros not to let Clara come to harm, but Davros tells him that he doesn't control the Daleks because, hey, they're prone to turning on him.
Exactly.
So so there's another connection. And Davros reasons with the Doctor that all this happened because the Doctor showed him compassion as a child, despite knowing his destiny, and that allowed Davros to create the Daleks, which have now killed his friends, or so he thinks.
Mm-hmm.
So we go back to, at the end of the episode, the child Davros, still pleading with the Doctor not to leave. He hears the TARDIS rematerialize behind him, and the Doctor returns. He says that he's come from the future and he has to save his friend the only way he can. So he pulls out a severed Dalek gun stick, which, hey, that was one of those was kind of used.
It was used in
this story because, that destroys that disc that recorded the Doctor's confession about what happens in their Dalek's future.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's another comparison. The Doctor glares toward the child, shouting, "Exterminate!" So
Nice.
That's our cliffhanger. So obviously there's a second part, the witch is familiar, but I just thought I'd hit The Magician's Apprentice for time. And obviously if you love Genesis of the Daleks, you should check out The Magician's Apprentice.
Absolutely.
But as you said, it kind of makes you want to check out this story after watching Genesis of the Daleks. So,
Absolutely. All right, Charles.
all right,
Do we have
we have a
we
couple of
have a feedbacks, don't we?
yeah, we do have a couple of feedbacks from our usual suspects, which is
Uh,
always great.
I have Holly's up if you want me to read that.
Yeah, yeah. Why don't you go ahead and read Holly's?
Okay, it says, "Hello all. I forgot how much I enjoyed the story. The Fourth Doctor with Sarah Jane and Harry is always a great team up. The Doctor emptying out his pockets had me chuckling. Me too.
That was that was
I
a good
thought
scene.
that was really nice.
This never-ending supply of junk
Yeah.
that the Doctor collects. Yes.
I would love to see that again because there could be a lot of fun Easter eggs in modern era. You could do that. That would be really cool.
Right.
The Talls and the Collids
The
are
Thalls
still
and the Thalls.
Collids are
Yeah.
still going at it.
Yep.
Davros showing off the Dalek, and then the one scientist wanting to protect the Doctor and Harry was a bit surprising. I completely forgot about the COUS clam of unusual size. I see what you did there, Holly.
A very nice Princess Bride reference.
Yes.
But, yeah.
At least the Doctor was able to free Harry from its clutches. The scientist is also wising up the experiments and research that they are doing may not necessarily be for the best interests of everyone. Davros thinking that he can flick the switch back and have the Daleks under his command may be slightly out of the possibility, but most of the Daleks followed orders, and just the rare few that went rogue. I really enjoyed the pairing of Harry with the Doctor in this story. I can't remember how often they were paired up together. Garman is starting to realize Davros' main plan may not be the most helpful.
Go figure.
The conversation with Doctor and the Davros, I forgot how tense it was, and how Davros wanted to know how to prevent the Daleks from failure. The Doctor in the room with the squid Daleks makes me wonder if the one that was in Resolutions didn't happen to travel through time and is actually one of the originals that Davros helped create.
That would be kind of cool, wouldn't it?
That would be. The ending where Davros realized that his creations aren't going to follow orders is poetic. A great story. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin.
Awesome. Well,
thank you, Holly, as always.
Yeah,
yes.
It's always great to hear from you. I really appreciate it. So we also got some feedback from Paul Beck from Australia. So hi, Paul.
Hey, Paul.
He says, hi, Charles and Jesse. So obviously paying attention that you were going to be back this episode. So credit for that. As I've said before, this story is one of my all-time favorites of Classic Who. The show really started firing on all cylinders and produced some great stories in this era. And with the Daleks having been absent for a while, we suddenly get their origin story, something that really hadn't been attempted with other villains such as the Cybermen and Centaurans at this stage. I would really like to see a Centauran story that shows how they developed into a race of clones, maybe one day. Yeah, it's kind of funny that we've never seen the genesis of the Centaurans, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And what a story, as we learned of the Daleks' creator Davros, an evil genius to rival his creations, and the end war between the Khalids and the Thals. The only criticism I have, if I was forced to have one, is that 6 episodes, it could have been tightened to 4 for more impact, maybe, question mark. Anyway, I love at the end of the story we have the Daleks turn on their creator. Very poetic. So interesting that 2 people right there who had no idea that the other was writing referenced how poetic it was, the poetic justice of having the Daleks turn on Davros. With the Time Lords sending the Doctor to do their dirty work, is this the spark that ignites the Time War? I suppose it is. Well, as we talked about, that's what Russell T. Davies says.
Absolutely.
So who are we to judge? I think that's perfect. And it fits in pretty well, I think.
I agree.
Hope you guys enjoyed the story as much as I do. Exclamation mark. Sending my kindest regards, Paul. P.S. Enjoyed the last podcast. Have to send a shout out to Fred, and that's Fred Firestein once again, as he did a great job co-hosting. Definitely get him back at some stage to do another one. Thumbs up emoji.
Yay.
So yeah, glad you liked Fred, and we liked Fred too. So definitely have to have him back. PSS, have got my eye patch ready to wear for the next episode, smiley face. I see what you're doing there, Paul. So next time on Next Stop Everywhere, we're going to talk about a classic John Pertwee story, Inferno. which is and we're going to have another special guest host, Lee Leonard, who expressed an interest in talking with us here on Next Stop Everywhere, not knowing if Jesse's going to be there or not. So Lee's going to join me, and we're going to talk about this classic John Pertwee story. It's also the last story with Liz Shaw, the Third Doctor's first companion. But that's neither here nor there, because it's this great story of the Third Doctor getting trapped on an alternate Earth where essentially it's Armageddon time and things don't look good. And by the end of the story, and the Doctor has to figure out how to escape that alternate Earth just before everything's destroyed by events that are happening on the regular Earth.
Ooh,
so he's got
nice.
So great dilemma. He's got to get back in time to prevent the same thing that destroyed this alternate Earth from happening to the regular Earth.
Oh, okay.
Great story. Early John Pertwee classic, I think. So
Good.
can't wait to talk about this story. So we'll be talking about that, and we're going to record that on February 10th. So that's a couple weeks from now. We'll probably get this out. So stay tuned, but it's going to be a good one. So if you're in a mood for a classic John Pertwee story, we're going to talk Inferno.
Nice.
All right. So if anybody else, if you're interested in kind of filling in, I know we've had some great fill-in hosts. We've got a couple more in the works. After Lee, we've got Christine Peruski that we're going to talk Planet of the Dead, which is a fun David Tennant story. That's the special with Lady Christina, so D'Souza. So looking forward to talking about that one. And maybe we'll talk Jesse into being on that one. Who knows? And then we're also hoping to get Stephanie Marie Friney, who's been following us on Next Stop Everywhere on Facebook and Twitter, and hopefully that she will join us as well.
Yeah.
She's reached out, so we're trying to line that up, and hopefully, Stephanie, if you're listening, hopefully you'll get back with some stories that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I am a big fan of Michelle Ryan.
Right.
I really liked her as the Bionic Woman.
Yeah, that short-lived reboot of the series.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one as well, but unfortunately NBC canceled it because NBC is NBC.
Yes.
So.
And I have not seen. She played Death in a short I just see on IMDb.
Really?
Black Sand, a Sandman story. I will have to try to figure out how we can see that.
Is that a fanfic?
It's got to be.
I mean, a fan film or something? Because
I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's only a 14-minute episode, and according to IMDb, it was budgeted for £8,000, so it's got to be.
Everybody run to YouTube and look that up.
Yeah, that looks very cool.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I would have loved her to come back to the her character to come back to Doctor Who sometime. I liked her a lot.
Yeah, I think she would be. Always thought she would be a great companion. So I'm looking forward to talking about that with Christine.
Yeah, that'll be great.
So Christine is going to talk Lady Christina.
Yes, I just noticed that. That's great.
Yeah, so that should be fun. Yeah. And it's been about a year since Christine has been on Next Stop Everywhere. We last talked about the Shakespeare Code, I believe, another David Tennant story. So definitely looking forward to talking with Christine again. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Charles is Charles and I are talking about what I've kind of with my new schedule. I'm trying to podcast a little less. Got some family stuff going on, but I told Charles I wanted to try to do at least one episode a month, and so we'll probably be scheduling something toward the end of February. He's going to give me a couple options. I'm going to give him a couple options, and I'm sure he will be announcing it in episodes coming up. But so I'm still available. You can find me on, and then I'll let Charles talk about how you can get the show. But you can find me on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. You can see me on Facebook. Jesse Jackson in Louisville, Texas. I'm continuing to do one episode a week of Set Listing Bruce because like I told Charles, there's no homework with Set Listing Bruce. I do the same agenda every time, and the guests do all the heavy lifting. I just ask them questions, and
he just likes
they
to
do.
show up, everybody.
That's right. That's it. So Charles, how if someone wants to give us feedback on this episode or others, how can they?
Yeah, so if you want to write in about what you thought about this story, Genesis of the Daleks, we'd still love to hear from you. Or Inferno that's coming up, or Planet of the Dead that we have on the schedule. You can reach us at Next Stop Everywhere SMG at gmail.com. That's Next Stop Everywhere SMG at gmail.com for Southgate Media Group, of course. Or you can reach us on the Twitter machine at Next Stop SMG. Or you can reach us on Facebook at Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. That's a great way to find us as well. And if you're in the mood, you'd like to hopefully get on the Instagram, you can reach us there on Instagram at Next Stop Everywhere podcast on Instagram. Now, Karen was a big proponent of the Instagram, but obviously she's been out for a while. The last update we got from Karen that is apparently that she seems to be doing okay, but her voice is completely shredded. So I'm hoping that her voice gets healed up and she can start doing podcasts again. Because obviously we've missed her here and Next Up Everywhere. And I'd love to be – we have Doom Patrol coming up on Titan Talk. So I'd love to have her there as well to talk about Doom Patrol. So – fingers crossed, because Karen, we miss you, and we're sending obviously all our thoughts and everything out to you, our best wishes that you get on speedy recovery. Otherwise, Jesse, where can they reach you on the interwebs?
Oh, I've already shared.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry.
Yes, that's okay. But
I'm sorry. Just juggling
yes,
multiple
out of
things
habit,
here.
Charles. How about how they can find you?
Yes. So as for me, you can reach me at Charles Skaggs on the Twitter machine or at Charles Skaggs on the Instagram. Facebook at Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio. And my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere and more. All kinds of comic book sci-fi news. When we start getting some news, I know that Doctor Who Series 12 has started going into production. And so hopefully we'll get some news from that, and we'll definitely obviously share that there as well, and also on our Next Stop Everywhere social media. But also news of my other podcasts I do for Southgate Media, including Titan Talk, the Titans podcast that I do with you, Jesse, every so often. We have Phil Parrish going to be joining us to talk about some Young Justice, and then you talked about that you'd like to come back and maybe talk the first Doom Patrol episode.
Absolutely.
So we'll be talking about that there on Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. Otherwise, Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast that do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic book artist Chris Sprouse, where we talk about all things Twin Peaks and David Lynch. And then the Phantom Zone podcast with Karen, but obviously with her being out, that's kind of gone on a little bit of a forced hiatus. Hopefully we can get that up and running at some point as well. But I miss talking comics on TV with Karen, so
absolutely
fingers crossed we can get her back at some point. Keep hoping. But other than that, Jesse, do we have a quote to lead us out?
No, I did not.
Okay, so the one time I remember to go to you for the quote
yes,
is when
you can see why I don't do my homework. Yes. No,
you get it incomplete this week.
Yes.
All right. So everybody, how about obviously the quote, do I have that right? Because
yes.
that fits perfectly for this episode. So everybody, thank you again for listening. We really appreciate it. I know things have been chaotic, but appreciate you guys bearing with us as we go through all this scheduling, trying to, with all the fill-ins and everything. We've got some great people coming up, and obviously people enjoyed Fred Firestein.
Yeah.
So if you enjoyed that, come on back for more, because next time we're going to talk Inferno, with Lee Leonard, and hopefully that will be good because it's one of my favorite John Pertwee stories.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
looking forward to that.
Yeah, and Charles, thank you for keeping the home fires burning and
I try
everything
my
going.
best.
You are doing great. So thank you, listeners. I appreciate it. Charles, take us out.
All right. So everybody, thanks again for listening, and we will see you next time right here for Inferno, episode 132, right here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Bye, everybody.